it stays on.
Hear me. Get organized.
Oh, they have. Mine didn't have this fuzz on it. Oh God. Pick this fuzz. So he switched me on that.
What's that feedback?
My brother-in-law's got a
Is this on?
I got an
Mustang.
Is that why he's sitting over there?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Are the lights off because of the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Because I hate the lights off. I'd like to, well, not PowerPoint, I get it. I'd like to call the committee of the whole meeting for Tuesday, April 12th to order. Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk,
Here.
Alderman Bushy,
Here.
Alderman Meyer,
Here.
Alderman Hancher,
Here.
Alderman Garrow,
Here.
Alderman Parrish, Alderman Schneider, here, Alderman Nervin,
Here.
and Mayor Worth.
Here. We have a full house. The first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from March 8th, 2022. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any questions, comments, corrections, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item on the agenda is department reports. As you know, we don't go through them, but we do allow a period for questions on any of the reports. Did anybody have anything out of the department reports that they'd like to ask staff about? Alderman Boucher.
It's not asked, but commenting on clerk's office. Commenting on the clerk's office, you were going to mention.
I was going to do it at the council meeting, but
Okay.
Anything else on the departmental reports? Hearing none. The primary reason we're having the committee of the whole meeting is the resolution to approve an intergovernmental agreement between the city of Mequon and the village of Thiensville to establish the Southern Ozaki Joint, I don't know where the word joint comes from, the Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department. I believe that the city administrator is going to kick off this discussion. Mr. Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Worth. Members of the Common Council, we very much appreciate you making time this evening for the joint working group to provide a presentation and an overview of the process that has been followed over the last several months. And as Mayor Worth noted this evening, the Intergovernmental Agreement is on the Common Council agenda at our regular meeting starting at 7:30 p.m. And what myself and Chief David Bialk to my right and Deputy Chief Kurt Zellman to my left are going to do this evening is provide an overview of the process, that the joint working group has followed, and then provide an overview of some of the key provisions and tenets contained within the Intergovernmental Agreement. And we hopefully have allowed some time for questions and comments from the council as we move into the second half of the hour. So with that, we'll walk through some slides, and it may be best if you turn your attention towards the screen. We will be rolling through a number of slides as part of this presentation. As the council will recall, back in December, the Memorandum of Understanding was executed between both the city and the village. We established a working group comprised of Mayor Worth, President Van Mobley from Thiensville, Chief David Bialk from here in Mequon, as well as Chief Brian Riles from the Thiensville Fire Department, myself as the Mequon City Administrator, and Colleen Landish-Hansen, the Village Administrator in Thiensville. We were joined by the two Deputy Fire Chiefs, Kurt Zellman and Joel Deutsch from Thiensville, and Battalion Chief Matt Schneider also joined us for several of our meetings. As was noted in the MOU, a number of areas were to be addressed through the working group's efforts. Those are listed up here on the screen. And since about mid to late January, this group has been hard at work, meeting on a nearly weekly basis, sometimes for 4 and 5 hours in a day, to hammer out this agreement and some of the details that accompany it. So a lot of work and a lot of effort in a very short amount of time. I wanted to point out some of the efforts that have been underway here in Mequon over the last number of years relative to fire and EMS service. I think it helps put into context some of the work that we're going to be talking about a little later, and it's helpful to understand from whence we came. Back in 2015, you can see we established a fire internship program in the department to help with staffing concerns nearly 7 years ago. Through a new collective bargaining agreement in 2016, employees received their first raise in 5 years. In 2017, an independent staffing study was completed by the Matrix Group. That study, as some of you will recall, recommended the hiring of 3 deputy chiefs to help oversee the 3 shifts that we operate on a 24/7 basis. Coming out of that report, the council authorized the hiring of Deputy Chief Zellman in 2018, and he was ultimately hired the year thereafter. And as Mayor Worth took office, he appointed a future of our fire department committee, chaired by Alderman Meyer and assisted by Alderwoman Schneider. That group met for the better part of 18 months and ultimately recommended $700,000 worth of additional funding to increase the amount of pay for all of our paid on-call staff in the department, as well as to hire 3 battalion chiefs that now staff the department on a full-time basis. In 2020, the city also committed to working with a number of our neighbors here in Ozaukee County to complete a 10-community study of fire and EMS with the Wisconsin Policy Forum. That effort carried forth into 2021, and the results were presented last March. Last year, we hired the 3 battalion chiefs, and so they've been on board now for just about a year. And here we are in 2022, now working with the village of Thiensville to merge our 2 departments to improve response times, improve service delivery, and once and for all address the staffing shortages that we've all experienced. The problem is not here just locally in Mequon and Thiensville. As I mentioned, we partnered with a number of our neighbors here in Ozaukee County to complete the Policy Forum study in 2021. That was presented here to the council, as I mentioned, last March. But as you can see on the chart here, other full-time staff are now being hired in several of the other communities across the county, including Cedarburg, Grafton, Saukville, Port Washington, Thiensville, and even small Fredonia up to the north. So a total of 13 full-time staff members have been hired over the last number of years, in addition to the 4 full-time staff persons that we've hired in the department and the 3 that we're in the process of bringing on board starting next Monday. Additionally, the county has gotten involved in the fire and EMS discussion, and just last week approved $5 million worth of ARPA funding to help supplement paramedic staffing across the county over the next 2.5 years. That'll come up a little later in the presentation as we walk through the agreement. Moving a little broader and widening the lens, fire and EMS staffing is not just a challenge here in Mequon and Thiensville and across the county, but it's a rising concern across the state. Here are many headlines that have been pulled from publications over the last 2-year period, which show that mergers are occurring, referendums are being called, departments are hiring full-time paramedics and firefighters, and other departments like West Bend are studying their fire department as we have. So for those that may hear that we have a problem here in Mequon and there used to be a way of providing fire and EMS services years or decades ago. This is not just a Mequon problem. It's not an Ozaukee problem. It's a statewide problem. And even beyond the great state of Wisconsin, it's a problem across the country and even internationally. And what you see here on the screen is a recent EMS One poll that was conducted just last week. And as you can see, the question was, how often does your service have no available units to respond? The majority of respondents indicated on a daily basis they do not have units available for service. So that's a pretty compelling data point that we want to keep in mind here as we walk through these conversations. The picture to the right is courtesy of Deputy Chief Zellman. He was vacationing in Europe just last month, and he noticed a recruitment banner in one of the cities in Germany where he was vacationing. And this is a recruitment banner that's in the downtown of the city that he visited. And while I don't speak German, Chief, can you help us here?
Yes, it just says, what do you want to be? And they have a volunteer fire department in that department in Korbach, Germany, and they're recruiting hard too. They're seeing the same issues that we are, and they need people.
Thank you, Chief. So, to the work of the working group. Before we kicked off any of our efforts in earnest to begin designing the combined department and drafting the intergovernmental agreement, which is on your agenda this evening, we took some time to develop some guiding principles that would help lead our work as we kicked off the process back in late January. And over the first couple of meetings, the working group centered upon these particular bullet points, which included the goals of stabilizing staffing across both communities and both departments, sustaining a hybrid staffing model, which includes not only full-time staff, but paid on-call staff for both fire response and EMS response, improving service in terms of both response times as well as health outcomes, eliminating redundancies, and under a combined department, we'll have one chief. We will be able to consolidate some equipment, and someday into the near future, we may even be able to reduce the number of stations that are currently being used. Controlling costs was, I think, a loud and clear message from both the village board and the common council in terms of this joint effort. We wanted to preserve scalability so that if opportunities presented themselves in the future to partner with other neighboring municipalities, the model that we're presenting here tonight would allow for that. And we want to continue to advance community relations between both the village and the city, both of whom have a long history of partnering together on a number of initiatives and programs and services that benefit everyone in the broader community. And this next slide, and I won't go through all of it, just lists some of the current partnerships across a number of different and very separate disciplines throughout our two communities. You look at the topic areas of education, governance, business and commerce, public safety, some of our civic groups, our athletic groups and our athletic activities, and even some of our cultural events, cultural institutions, and community events. We have a shared nature to a lot of what we do here, and combining our efforts with respect to one fire department, I think falls very much in line with what you see here. So, getting into the work of the group and some of the data points and some of the information that we looked at as we kicked off our process included some of these general considerations that were shared by the fire department staff that was really half of the working group committee. And so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Bayelk, and he and Deputy Chief Zellman are going to walk us through the next several slides, and we'll look at some of the data and some of the information that have helped build tonight's recommendations.
Thank you. Well, first of all, Mequon Fire Department tries to staff for 2 ambulances and 2 first responders every day, 24/7, 365. I think you've been here long enough to understand that we have 50 square miles. We try to cover it by having the first responder vehicles taken home by community members who park it in their driveway. When there's a call, they take off right to the scene. It allows time for other members to come from home, assemble on the ambulances, and then respond. So 6 people a day is what we're trying to keep on there. 1 ambulance is we need 2 people, 1 person doesn't do anything, and oftentimes you need a third person, you need 2 people in the back and 1 person to drive. It seems if you go through what's in the industry, the best practice, you need about 1 ambulance for every 1,000 calls. We have about 2,400 last year, almost 2,400 last year. Another best practice is it seems that every 10,000 residents, you need 1 ambulance for, just to make sure you have the resources available when the incidents occur. Last year, our average run time, and this means from the time we received the call till the unit was back in service, was 56 minutes. So it's getting people to assemble at the station, respond to a call, take the person in the ambulance to whatever hospital they want to go to, and then come back and restock and clean and get the vehicle ready for the next call. Currently, so far this year, 27% of our shifts are going unfilled. We cannot staff our 2 first responders and our 2 ambulances around the clock. We're always falling short of that. And in relation to that, oftentimes, 27% of the time, we have 2 calls going on at the same time, meaning before that 56 minutes is up, there's another call that's come in for somebody else who needs assistance, and even 15% of the time, we get a third call that'll come in. This is the way we do it in Mequon. We have 2 community responders come and take the ambulance in those 2 Jeeps. We park 1 on the west side, we try to park 1 on the east side, and they try to, and they respond right to the call. So that kind of reduced the response times to help us get at least 1 person to the scene with medical training so they know what they're, until the ambulance can show up several minutes later.
What we're going to do now is show you a quick video clip, and Deputy Chief Zellman is going to narrate while we get the clip going.
So this clip you're going to see right now is an example of what's needed to respond effectively to a cardiac arrest. And really what I'd like you to see here is that there's multiple things going on at the same time. With only 1 person on scene, we can't be doing multiple things at the same time. So in order to give someone the best chance of survival, we need an effective response force on scene, which means enough people in a short enough amount of time to change the direction of that emergency. See, everyone's working here.
Okay, so this video goes on for quite some time, but I think everybody gets the point. And Chief, as you mentioned, there are a lot of first responders doing a lot of different things when someone is potentially having the worst day of their life.
Exactly.
Under staffing considerations, this model, this pie chart just shows that the yellow is the time we have simultaneous calls, 2 calls going on, and the red is when there's that 3rd call going on. And that's just a picture of an ambulance after we're done with it. We have to sometimes clean all that up before we get in service. So the average is 56 minutes, but oftentimes it takes longer than that to get us back in service. And I know I keep talking about EMS and paramedics here, and it's important to remember that this is not just an EMS problem, it's a fire problem too, to have enough people. But this model we've come up with keys very heavily on the EMS side of it. They're not just paramedics, they're also firefighters, so serve in that capacity. So we're actually getting the best of both worlds by having somebody who's dual trained. This staffing challenges, the group looked at some very interesting statistics. One in Mequon is in 2020, we had 3 people that worked 9,000 hours. Just 3 people alone, and all 3 of those people have since left us. They've either retired, moved on to another department, and that we can't replace it. Somebody who has that much time and energy to dedicate to the department, they're just not around anymore. The declining rates of volunteerism, I think you could see on a national level. If you try to get a Rotary Club together or Lions Club, it's tough to find people. The pandemic, we had some people leave the department during the pandemic because they're like, well, I'm not going to risk this for my family. And I think ever since the pandemic, people's attitudes towards work have changed, but we can talk about that forever. The additional training requirements, we got a slide coming up that talks about training, but everything we do, we have to have a state license for. You have to be state licensed or certified to be a paramedic or an EMT, firefighter. So all that cuts in the amount of time that people might have to give or volunteer. A lot of our people have taken full-time jobs. We consider ourselves a farm league. Most paid-on-call departments are. We hire people for a while, they get some experience, and they just go someplace else. We don't have too many community members coming to us and say, oh, I want to be an EMT and a firefighter for the next 20 years. The younger people come in, get some experience, and leave. Some of the older people stay for a while, but it's a huge commitment for them to stick around. We've gone through a huge recruitment effort. We use social media quite a bit. We've hired probably 100 people in the last year or so, but we find that even the number of people we hire have less hours to give. And I know in Thiensville they've suffered some of the same problems we have. That graph where they have three people doing the majority of their work. And recently, Thiensville was out of commission. We had a small department. Everyone had COVID. And during the holidays, they had some shortages where we had to respond for them all the time. Here's our call volume history for the last 10 years. You can see we've doubled since 2011. It's everything. It's an aging population. It's probably some CBRFs that may be going in. All that it contributes to this call volume. You can see the fire volume, the fire call stuff is kind of consistent, but the EMS is just that's what we're trying to cover.
So this slide is going to show you our average EMS response time, and it's broken out into a histogram to show you the distribution. Right there you'll see that the average EMS response time to get an ambulance on scene is 10 minutes in this community. Hopefully if this plan goes through and we can add additional staff and work together, we will shift that line to a lower time level. So our goal, and we will accomplish it, is to get an ambulance on scene to be able to transport a person and deliver them to the hospital much sooner than we can do today.
The training requirements just for EMT basic. So this is the basic technician. You need certification to be on an ambulance is 180 hours. So you go to MATC twice a week for 4 hours for 18 weeks. At the end of that, you walk out with a certificate if you pass their National Registry exam. And you have to get recertified every 3 years. You need 30 continuing hours. Fighter 1 in hazmat, which is kind of the teacher at the same time. It's 120 hours just to send someone, again, 2 nights a week to MATC for 16 weeks to come out with those certifications. And a paramedic, which is really what we need, that's 1,800 hours. That's, you have to quit your job or be somebody who's young and doesn't have a job, go to school full time for an entire year, including clinicals, until you come out as a paramedic. I also want to bring up that I just want to be really clear that this does not eliminate our paid on call. We still need them. We will still need them for fire calls. We will still need them to backfill for EMS. We're still going to call them in on EMS calls. They're vital to this whole thing happening. If we don't have the paid on call, this doesn't even happen. So we have to continue with that. And one more thing I want to mention about the Public Policy Forum. In their summary report, they said that everyone in Ozaukee County has bad response times and they need to invest in their emergency services. And they said if you invest together, you can spend a lot less than if you went on your own. And that's what this working group is trying to come up with, a plan to do it together.
Chief, isn't there also a new training requirement that's coming online for a higher training level?
Well, EMT basic is going to go up to, I think it's 240 hours. So someone who wants to, so it's going to be 2 nights a week at MATC for an entire fall semester and a spring semester just to become an EMT. So even to be the most basic person on the ambulance, that's a huge commitment to ask someone to make.
So combining the state mandated training requirements, the doubling of the call volume over the last 10 years, as well as our not less than standard response time, these are the factors that are driving the recommendation that you'll see tonight as part of the intergovernmental agreement on the agenda. So, moving to the intergovernmental agreement, the key provisions as outlined in the memo contained in your packet includes establishment of a 5-person board of directors, which will be comprised of 2 representatives from Thiensville, as well as 3 from the city of Mequon. 4 out of those 5 representatives will be elected officials from the 2 governing boards. Those same 5 members will also comprise the Joint Fire Commission, which will oversee hiring, discipline, and termination for any full-time members within the department. A separate financial records system will be implemented as we move into 2023 under one unified budget. And as has been pointed out on a couple of occasions here over the last number of minutes, we will have increased EMS staffing with paid on-call fire and EMS staffing supplementing those shifts that are otherwise available on weekends and during overnight hours. The initial funding ratio contained within the agreement calls for Mequon to contribute 84.5% of funding over the next several years, while Thiensville will pick up 15.5% of the funding. As was noted in the staff memo, this reflects the current budgets for 2022 and will carry forth during the initial 5.5-year term of the agreement. And that ratio can be relooked at or renegotiated once the agreement is renewed, or if additional communities merge with the combined department. Key milestones within the intergovernmental agreement, as was pointed out, we're taking a phased approach. And so here in 2022, pending approval of the intergovernmental agreement by both governing boards, operations will merge as of July 1st, and Chief Byauk will become the fire chief of both the Mequon Fire Department as well as the Thiensville Fire Department. Chief Riles is retiring in June, and so they will have a vacancy, and the timing of that works well in terms of coming together as one unified command. As was also pointed out in the staff memo, the merger becomes official on January 1 of 2023. That's when a new combined budget will take effect. And so one of the to-dos here, pending approval of the IGA, will be development of a new standalone budget apart from the village and the city here during the latter part of 2022. In terms of equipment, capital, facilities, we've lent a little longer planning horizon to some of those steps that comprise the merger. In 2023, a plan will be put together to merge equipment and apparatus and begin selling off excess pieces and combining that element of the department. And then a facilities plan will be established and implemented beginning in 2025. And so for the time being, we will operate out of the 3 stations, and the 5-person governing board will certainly have some say in terms of how those stations are managed and utilized into the future once they begin meeting here later this year. Here's a conceptual staffing plan that was included within one of the exhibits that is attached to the intergovernmental agreement. And as we've pointed out previously, we anticipate building towards a fully staffed EMS division, which will provide 3 ambulances with 2 paramedics each on a 24/7 basis, 365 days of the year. And the phased staffing plan contemplates Mequon's conversion of paramedics, taking care of this first row of full-time staff. We will gain an additional 3 paramedics here this year through the merger consolidation. Thiensville has already hired one of these paramedics. Mequon is in the process of hiring a second paramedic, and we're going to wait and see where things fall after next month's meeting in Thiensville to determine if and when we're going to fill that last paramedic vacancy. Then in 2023, 2024, 2025, 2026, and then in 2027, we anticipate hiring a full complement or 3 shifts worth of paramedics in those 5 years. And some of that will be dependent upon available funding, both from a tax revenue standpoint as well as a non-tax revenue standpoint. Non-tax revenues comprise a significant component of both the Mequon and the Thiensville Fire Department budgets. That relates to ambulance fees, fire insurance dues, paramedic intercepts, and other miscellaneous permits and licensing fees. Key action steps that will have to be pursued here in the latter part of the calendar year, pending approval of the IGA, were listed in the agreement under Attachment A. I've highlighted a couple of them here on the screen, but you can see budget and development of the standalone budget will be a big piece. We'll have to negotiate new mutual aid agreements with our surrounding communities. We'll have to figure out the vehicle and the apparatus details by December 1st. And we're hoping to consolidate ambulance billing under one vendor. We think that's going to generate some additional revenues going forward on a non-tax basis. Financial impacts are laid out in Exhibit B of the five-year plan within the Intergovernmental Agreement. And what the working group has tried to do is enumerate the all-in cost of merging. And, it's a forecast. And as we project 4 and 5 years out, obviously some of those numbers are going to change. But we were very conservative in terms of generating estimates for full-time staff, for inflation factors, and other costs that would be impacting a combined budget. So we thought it was only fair to show the council and the village board what we would think would be the upper ceiling, so to speak, of a combined budget that fully staffs EMS over a 5-year period. As you can see here, we've included salary, insurance, retirement, and all the fully loaded costs that come with hiring a full-time staff person. We've accounted for wage and step increases per the current collective bargaining agreement here in Mequon. And we've conservatively estimated the Ozaukee County funds that I mentioned earlier, and really only included funds that may be available to one of the 2 municipalities. We anticipate potentially getting even more money based on the criteria that were approved by the county board last week. But again, we want to be very conservative in our budgetary estimates so that we don't have a whoops moment 3 or 4 years down the road. The figures will continue to be refined in the 5-year forecast in connection with the 2023 budget. I'm sure the combined fire board will be taking a close look at those numbers as they move forward in their work in the months ahead. Here quickly, as we come to a close, are some of the details related to the Ozaukee County EMS grants program that we referenced earlier. Municipalities with a fire and EMS program are eligible for up to $200,000 a year. We have to provide some supporting documentation, to the county by July 1st. And so I know the deputy chiefs are already working on application materials on behalf of both departments so that we're ready to get in the door on day one. Municipalities with consolidation agreements can also realize an additional $100,000 a year over a 2.5-year period. And if for some reason we would begin to partner with even a third municipality, there are additional funds available on a capital award basis. Here quickly is just a sampling of some of the other communities across southeast Wisconsin and into central Wisconsin that I think provide good comparisons to the Southern Ozaki department, the merged department that is contemplated in the IGA. And as you can see, the population figures correlate rather well. The land area varies to some degree, and the call volumes are relatively similar across the board. Full-time staff obviously is different across a number of departments. The number you see here for the Mequon-Thiensville department is 27 and a half. That would come in 2027 at full staff build-out. And our daily minimum would be in the neighborhood of between 7 and 9, so the number there is 8. And our budget on a combined basis, according to the documents in your packet, comes to $4.3 million. And if you look in the far right-hand column, many of the numbers here are higher than 4.3. Now, there are some that are lower, but I think there's 3 or 4. So from a pricing standpoint or a cost standpoint, we feel the proposal before you is well conceived and fiscally responsible. So that concludes the working group's presentation. We went a little over on time, so we very much appreciate your attention and your patience. And I'll turn it back over to the mayor, who was a member of the working group. Mayor, I don't know if you have any other comments you'd like to share, and we're certainly here to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Just a couple of comments. I believe that the agreement that we're presenting to you is a good agreement for both communities. Is it perfect? My guess is that if Thiensville was drafting it for Thiensville on their own, there'd be a couple things different. If Mequon was drafting it on its own, we'd have a couple things different. It was a negotiated agreement over a lot of time, trying to find an agreement that works well for both communities. Now, and there are certain things that even if we were doing it just for Mequon, that I would change if we could. But the point is, it's a negotiated agreement. And I think in our discussions and our deliberations, that's an important element to remember. This is not something where often we get an agreement or a proposal and we start redlining this little thing or whatever. It's more complicated when you're doing it with two communities. Also, other communities that have done this have had opportunities on numerous occasions as they live it and experience it to make changes. North Shore has had, I believe, 4 amendments to their agreement that were further negotiations as the department realized that there are some things that, you know, you learn, you live and learn. So I think that that's, you know, those are important things to think about. Mr. Jones made the point, and there's a good slide of all the many things that our two communities do together. And I think that that's an important element for both communities to remember. Our senior brother, we have a symbiotic relationship with Thiensville. Thiensville is our senior brother. They were around a long time before we were. They were our downtown. They still are to some degree. Our town center works together. And we have a joint library. There's been, I've heard, a little bit of scuttlebutt about the name. You know, it's been great that the library isn't the Mequon-Thiensville Library or the Thiensville-Mequon Library. It's the Weinberg Library because it belongs to both of us. Now, if somebody wanted to come and give $10 million, we could name it after them, but I don't think that's happening. So I think having a description that describes our community as opposed to our individual municipalities, I believe, is a good thing to develop community. But that doesn't say that we're creating one community. Let me rephrase that. That doesn't say we're trying to create one municipality. We're not. We have two municipalities that have very different histories, very different cultures, and we're going to keep that. Just because we're working together on something doesn't mean that somebody's taking over somebody else, that somebody is, we're removing the distinction. And we're not removing the history here either. A lot of discussion in the working group, for example, about keeping the name Thiensville on some Thiensville stuff, keeping the name Mequon. If we added Cedarburg, and by the way, we're not talking about Cedarburg tonight. We're talking about you can have that debate later. But these are two groups who are working together to try to retain identity, but also create efficiency. And I think that that's important because it makes sense. Frankly, it may have made sense a while ago. But in today's world where you can't get the volunteers, in today's world where everybody's competing with everybody to hire people, to have multiple chiefs in two communities, this is a good deal for both communities. And so I hope that we don't get into trying to micromanage the agreement that both communities had a lot of input on, that we either at this committee recommend it to ourselves and pass it later on, or if we opt not to do this, which I think would be a tragedy for both communities, that we simply move on and do that. But amending this all over the place, it just creates complication. And I think we want to send a message. We've got a whole bunch of our friends from Thiensville here, that we want to work with Thiensville. And there's lots of parts of this that could be different. You can argue about how many people are on the board and all sorts of things, but those things are superficial. This is I believe, much like the library, much like some of our other things, we'll work together in good faith to find what's best for both communities. And both communities will have heightened service. Now, and maybe I'll direct one comment to our friends in Thiensville. Ultimate location and how new facilities and what have you, it's not going to change the distance for people in Thiensville, the response times. No matter what happens, this will increase everybody's response times because there'll actually be somebody there to respond. And neither community has figured out a way to do that for years. And it isn't a method of pointing. We can't point at management of our individual departments, because if you're going to say that, then you have to point it at the management of almost every department, of every paid-on-call department in the country. And yes, and certainly in the state. Yeah, I've heard some people say, well, there's this particular department, one or two of them named. Those are the anomalies. And this corrects it was great when I was 20 years ago when I was a new alderman, and the fire department, we gave them a ham sandwich and everything was great. We occasionally bought a truck, and we had great people, and we had more people than we knew what to do with. But that's not the world we're living in. And you can't say, well, we can go back to that world, because nobody else has figured out how to do it either. So I really hope that we pass this tonight. I hope we send a message that we're all in agreement and that we fervently invite our big brother Thiensville to join us in this venture, and that this is a great thing that lasts for a long time to serve both of our communities well. So I'll shut up and hear if there are other comments or questions. Alderman Schneider.
Just a comment to start off with. I really appreciate the amount of effort that has been put forth to create this document. I mean, it really shows how carefully everyone went through all of these various issues. It's rather complicated, as it probably should be. A lot of things need to be spelled out. I truly appreciate it. I am very happy that both Thiensville and Mequon are looking at getting full-time professional folks situated in their various fire departments, because I think this is going to be a great increase in service to our community. I think our response times, our turnout times for sure, are going to be lessened. And I'm just, it's been a bit of a passion of mine all along to improve this situation, and I'm thrilled.
Thank you. Alderman Nervin. Or should I say Mayor-elect Nervin?
Alderman's fine for now. Thank you. I'd like to thank the mayor, Mayor Worth, President Mobley, and staff on both sides for all their hard work on this. This is really critical for both communities, and I kind of found it funny, the mayor's example of our big brother Thiensville. I've thought about that analogy myself the whole time I've been in government. It's we're brothers, we're family. I mean, sometimes like brothers, we have a little bit of a sibling rivalry, and that's good. We've got our own identity, and I know we both want to preserve that, but when times get tough, family comes together, and Thiensville and Mequon are family. It's good to see us coming together to help each other out and solve some of these critical issues, and I sincerely hope we pass this unanimously tonight.
Alderman Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. I have just under 5 minutes of comments.
All right.
To summarize my thoughts on this important matter. I did want to thank Administrator Jones and Chief Bjork for their dedication to the Thiensville Department consolidation. I especially want to thank Mayor Worth, who's been relentless in getting the deal to this point, to your very last meeting after all these years. This will be a big part of your legacy, and we appreciate it. It is not easy to transform an institution that has been in operation since 1933, almost 90 years. Thiensville Department has roots back to 1857. That's 165 years old. So this really isn't an easy decision for them either. And so thank you to Thiensville for its trust and ongoing spirit of partnership that has worked so well with the library and other shared services. While I'm in favor of the Thiensville merger, because philosophically it makes sense, it would have been nice to have some more detailed data points to share with the public this evening. I did appreciate the presentation and would request we post this online as soon as possible. The most helpful data would have been projections if we don't merge, thus providing the needed contrast to our Common Council. There was also a note in there that we will need to adjust our respective tax levies in the coming years, even with this difficult decision. The public should understand, however, that we are choosing the lesser of two evils in terms of levy increases, and I believe that is the case here. I do want to point out philosophy will not cut it for the Cedarburg MOU we signed, and we need much better data to justify that consolidation. Unfortunately, I have spoken to or heard from some Thiensville residents and leaders that even if we move forward tonight, there remains uncertainty and reluctancy from its residents and policymakers. Words like acquisition, takeover, temporary fix for Mequon will be used most likely instead of partnership and consolidation. This is partly because we are seen as a growing 50 square mile community compared to their 1 square mile community which can't grow. Thiensville affirmation is far from a certainty, as they will still have a basic presentation about this next week and will then vote on May 2nd. There's still the chance that they will leave us at the altar after tonight's vote to proceed. And so we must show trust and extend this offer of respect and partnership by voting to proceed, potentially with one modification, which is what I would like to propose. While the Southern Ozaki Joint Fire and EMS Department is just a name, it's just a name, I would like to request that we amend the name to be what we are actually creating, the Thiensville Mequon Fire and EMS Department. Thiensville and Mequon hardly constitute Southern Ozaki County, and so the naming sends the wrong message to Mequon and Thiensville about each Common Council's intentions, including our scope of geographic services. And more troubling, it seems to keep the door open for other southern municipalities to join this organization without hesitancy. The name seems to come from the Wisconsin Policy Forum report, which could result in additional mergers under their concepts. One called the Southern Ozaki Fire Department, ironically, which goes on to merge with Grafton, Saukville, and Cedarburg. My proposed name, Thiensville and Mequon Fire and EMS Department, can easily be changed if we pursue additional consolidations. Based on the conversations I've had, I believe my proposed name change would be better received by Thiensville policymakers, residents, and increase the likelihood for their affirmative vote for this partnership on May 2nd. In conclusion, the long-term success of the fire and EMS institutions results from our mutual community pride. Because of that pride, it results in funding, volunteerism, and sustainability. That will continue to be the secret to our success, to offer cost-effective and timely fire and EMS services to both communities that we are both proud of. I really hope we can reconsider the name to the Thiensville-Mequon Fire and EMS Department, but proceed either way tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Parrish. Anybody else? Alderman Carroll.
So I'm driving into the meeting tonight, and I cut through Thiensville. And right as I'm cutting through Thiensville, an EMS truck comes by from Mequon, going right through the middle of Thiensville, out to the west, and then another fire truck followed that one. So Thiensville being the donut hole right in the middle like this is pretty. It's time for this we should merge. I mean, it should be a merger. I agree with Alderman Parrish that I like the name, that this is a partnership with Mequon and Thiensville. We have a Mequon and Thiensville school district. Maybe the name would be Mequon and Thiensville, fire department or something along that lines. And I do agree that I don't want to see us expand this. It took a long time to figure this out. I don't want to see us expand this into other communities right away without a lot of thought and a lot of looking at the numbers and understanding whether we're getting value added or not from doing that. Government has a tendency sometimes to start to grow and then grow and grow, and you become a bureaucracy, and I think it's going to work really well with Thiensville. And another thing, I've been in business for over 40 years, and I've made a couple mistakes in business, and one of the biggest ones I ever made is I start on something, I get all excited about it, and I grow too fast. It's better to grow slower, figure out what all the nuances are, what the problems are, the situations you're going to face, solve those. Once all that is solved, move together, then you can start to look at, does this area make sense? Is there ways that we can improve even further? So I agree with Alderman Parrish. Changing the name would be, I'd like to see it more something where it's just the two communities, just like you come in and you have our entryway that we spent, I don't know, a couple $1 million on the entryway or $1 million on the entryway, Mequon, Thiensville, same thing right here with our fire department, but it makes a lot of sense. And cutting through Mequon, cutting through Thiensville to go to a fire or the EMS, I mean, being combined makes a lot of sense there. Again, I think I don't want to see us grow too fast. I don't want to see us invite anyone else until we get this thing in, working appropriately. And if we do start looking outside of that, then we start looking outside of that. But I think that's quite a ways off.
Alderman Strelchak.
I'll be brief on this because I've got a new microphone tonight, thanks to Will Jones. I've been a part of this community for over 40 years. I grew up riding my bike through Thiensville. I never knew where the line of Thiensville began and where it ended, but I knew the downtown and I knew the fire department. There's a lot of pride in growing up in this community, and I'm calling this community Mequon Thiensville or Thiensville Mequon, however you want to phrase it. I think this merger is a great opportunity for both communities to come together as one and just another place here. We've got several individuals from the Thiensville leadership, in the audience tonight. They're here with us. It's not a them versus us; it's an us, and what can we do better together as partner communities moving forward, as we've done with the schools and so many other places. So, as I sit here tonight, again, to what Mayor Worth had stated, I'm sure the agreement might have been a little different had Thiensville written it. I'm sure it might have been a little different had Mequon written it. But where we're at right now is a good place, and a good place where we could both agree as communities that we both win. We've seen the financials about a year ago. Wasn't that report read out about a year ago where the financials would go, in the future if we didn't look to consolidation of fire departments? As a community, you want to be as fiscally conservative as possible, but you also want it to be incredibly safe for your residents. I think this merger does exactly that. And as we vote on this tonight, and as Thiensville votes on this moving forward, and we look at the safety of our combined communities and the talents that we have in both communities, I think this is a really great move moving forward for everybody involved. So I will be voting in favor of this tonight, regardless of the name. Either way, whichever way that goes, I'll be voting in favor of this tonight.
Anybody else? Alderman Boucher.
Just two quick comments, actually three. I agree with Alderman Parrish. Impressive amount of work going into this. Deputy Chief Zellman, when you started showing the histogram, that actually was talking up the alley I like. And one of the things I would recommend that we do, assuming this goes forward, is just as we have at the beginning of the committee of the whole documents with different departments, it would be very interesting as this goes forward to see the changes in response times and in the different areas to show the directions and improvements. So that would be very beneficial. And then also from a different angle, I'm just wondering if there are ordinance changes we need to also be considering to.
There will be. We've actually identified them with the mayor's help. I think all of them. Assuming that it gets approved this evening, you'll see a first reading of those next month with final approval in June.
Anybody else? Alderman Parrish.
When it's time to make the motion, I'd like to.
It's fine. Well, it's always time to make a motion. We have discussion after a motion anyhow, so if you'd like to make a motion.
Yes, I would like to make a motion to approve the consolidation of the Mequon, Thiensville, the existing Mequon, Thiensville fire departments, with the only modification to change the name to the Thiensville and Mequon fire and EMS departments.
Okay, I'm going to divide the question with the issue of the name being a separate vote. Yeah. If I could comment on the name, a couple of things. First of all, Mequon Thiensville is southern Ozaukee County. If you look at a map, there's a straight line that goes across. We are the southern portion of the county. We stretch from the west side of the county to the east side of the county to the south side of the county. So it is a perfectly good description. It avoids having one name or the other first. Yes, we are not voting on Cedarburg tonight. Cedarburg hasn't asked us to vote on them yet. But it is something that we ought to at least this isn't one step in having Cedarburg there, because there's lots of things that would have to happen. And my guess is that won't be in 2023, that'll be in 2022, that'd be in 2023, if they came and asked us. I can tell you with certainty that every modeling we did, having Cedarburg join us, would give the same level of staffing same level of service in Cedarburg, and would reduce Thiensville's and Mequon's cost. There was also in the negotiations, and again, remember, this is a negotiated agreement. There is a benefit to Thiensville in potentially having Cedarburg there because of the way the board would then be comprised, where you'd have the town, the city of Cedarburg, as well as the city of Mequon and Thiensville, where Mequon isn't as much of a larger, it creates a little more balance on the board. So there's lots of good, and let me tell you one of the downsides in creating a name that if in fact you decide you want to change, there's a logistical downside. It's probably a 6-month process to go to all the billing systems and the insurance companies and the state to create new names and get new, if that ultimately happens and they merge into our system, that's relatively seamless. If instead you want to change the name, you're going to have a 6-month or longer process. That's part of the reason why this merger doesn't become effective until, if approved by both communities, until January 1, 2023, because we couldn't get it done before then. So the joint name has a benefit, it has lots of different benefits. And because we're going to retain identity and allow the, Thiensville and Mequon to be on trucks and potentially badges and what have you, so that there is retained identity, we're not losing that. So I do hope that you recognize that this was, again, it's a negotiated agreement. And just because we think that there may be some benefit doesn't mean we should take that away from Thiensville. At a minimum, if we go forward with that, I would hope that we'd give that decision to the village of Thiensville to make rather than Mequon.
Which decision?
The name. So that we're not making a decision.
Mequon-Thiensville versus Southern Ozaki.
Yes, because that was the negotiated solution. So do we want to now impose upon them a different answer after spending 3 or 4 months negotiating this? Or do we want to let them make that decision?
I don't want to speak for the other aldermen up here. I'm just not ready to let go of names. I'm sorry.
All right. Well, I'm just telling you.
This is the first meeting that we've been able to present this to the public. I feel that half the public doesn't even know we're voting on this tonight. I appreciate the news graphic notifying the public. This is going to be a very big surprise for a lot of people, even though we've been talking about it a year and a half. I don't think they realize we're voting on it tonight. I still want to vote on it tonight. I want to consolidate. I don't care if there's red tape later on. Let's just, if all of us aren't comfortable, why can't we go in baby steps here so that everyone can be on the same page and it's win-win? If I heard that the name was what I'm proposing is detrimental, I would totally withdraw it right now and say, fine, let's do Southern Ozaki. But I don't think that's the case. I think that the leaders of Thiensville are hearing a lot from their residents. I think they have their own opinions, and they just like us, they were not a part of the negotiations, which I completely respect. You guys did a wonderful job, but this is like the first time we've seen it. We're trying to catch up with you. We're trying to get comfortable with it. We all want this for the purpose of a wonderful partnership with Thiensville. Southern Ozaki County, I'm not ready for it yet. So anyways, I made the motion. I respect if my colleagues don't want to do that. I just wanted to give us the option since we weren't given some of these options. So I would like to at least have a vote on one item.
Oh, we're going to vote on it. I was simply asking if you'd make that item an option for the village of Thiensville to decide if in fact we're going to have that as the vote, so that we're not imposing something upon them. Just a thought. We have a motion and a second, though. The first item we're going to vote on is, and this is just a recommendation of the council, so we will rehash this later, although our history has been generally to confirm whatever we do during the committee of the whole. But the first motion is going to be on the agreement as a whole. And is there any further discussion on the agreement as a whole?
So you're not going to do the name first?
No, we'll do the name second.
I'll second the recommendation since we only have a motion and not a second.
No, there was a second. There was a motion and a second. I just divided the question.
Okay.
So we're going to vote on whether we're doing this, and then we'll decide the name after that.
Okay.
That's the order that we're going to do this. So, Madam Clerk, if you could call the roll, please.
Alderman Strelchak,
Aye.
Alderman Bushy,
Aye.
Alderman Meyer,
Aye.
Alderman Hancher,
Aye.
Alderman Garrow,
Aye.
Alderman Parrish,
Aye.
Alderman Schneider,
Aye.
Alderman Nervin.
Aye.
I'm very pleased that we have unanimity. The second is on the issue of the name. We have a motion to amend the agreement to change the name to Thiensville Mequon Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department. Does anybody want to take up the recommendation I gave to at least give that an option, that it's Thiensville's option? Okay, well then we'll have a vote on that. Alderman Garrow.
Why can't we vote on it, and if Thiensville doesn't like it, we can change it, because you don't have any paperwork done, you don't have anything stamped on it, you don't have any, you have to go through all these mounds of data to change the name. Why don't we do that and then see what Thiensville comes back with? I'm sure it's not going to break the deal.
Well, we do have all the paperwork done, and people are going to get going. But if that's what you want to do, we certainly can, and then have to come back and have another meeting. Alderman Nervin.
Let me just ask a question a little different way. You're suggesting we give Thiensville the option to choose that. I think that's wise. I don't think that renaming it is required. If it makes their vote go easier and helps them adopt it, I'd be open to it. But I recommend we give them the choice. I don't think we need to do it, but I think we need a different motion on the table.
Well, that could be the motion to amend the motion.
I'm just wondering if the maker of the motion is open to that construct.
No, for the reasons I explained.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Garrell.
You know, we have a branding. I mean, my undergraduate was marketing. I did marketing along with my finance for years. We brand stuff, and there's a brand, a Mequon Thiensville brand or a Thiensville Mequon brand. We are, you said they're like our big brother. I think it sounds a lot better than the Southern Ozaki Joint Emergency. How far does Ozaki County go up? I mean, it could easily stretch to Grafton and into Cedarburg and into, maybe even to Saukville. That's Southern Ozaki County still. So, I think it's a minor thing to do. We will do this if Dan Mobley goes back to his group over there and they say they don't like that, they want to do the other, What mounds of paperwork do we have to change? We come back for a meeting for 15 minutes and we make a decision. It's not a big deal. We vote on it, we do it. If we have to change it, we change it. We're flexible. This isn't something where we're going to file a bunch of paperwork and send it off to the state. And, I like to vote on it. I'll probably vote to keep it the branding something that we've had for decades.
We're going to vote on it. I just was asking. Anybody else? Alderman Strelchuk.
I just have a question. I wasn't in a lot of the meetings. How important was it to Thiensville to have a Thiensville Mequon in the negotiations? Can we talk about that openly here?
A vast amount of discussion about the name, and the agreement was that it was better to go this route.
Okay.
With both communities. President Mobley, did you want to say something? Please come to the podium.
But I was in the meetings where we discussed Southern Ozaki, and I'm perfectly pleased with that name. That's it.
I would also tell you that the concept of adding all sorts of other communities, both at county meetings, granted I won't be the mayor going forward, but President Mobley and I both we probably didn't make some other communities happy because we said, look, we're not doing Grafton or a countywide department. We want to walk before we run, and we frankly don't think that's necessary. And those other communities have a lot more problems than Mequon Thiensville, Cedarburg. The Cedarburg issue can be deferred, but President.
And then I would also, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I would also say, too, it is a negotiated document. My suggested name was the Pigeon Creek Fire and EMS Services, because Pigeon Creek is a creek that runs through both communities. So that's it. It's a negotiated document, but it's a very good one, and I'm very thankful for Mayor Worth's and work and the team as well. So I support the name that we came out with. Although, just to tell you, that's what I was for Pigeon Creek, and I didn't hear that. I didn't hear you mention that.
Thank goodness that wasn't the finalist.
So we have a motion to amend the agreement to make it the Thiensville Mequon Fire and Emergency Medical Services Department. No further discussion. Please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
No.
Alderman Hancher?
No.
Alderman Garrow?
Aye.
Alderman Parrish?
Aye.
Alderman Schneider?
No.
Alderman Nervin?
No.
Alderman Strelchuk?
No.
3 ayes and 5 noes.
Oh, I thought it was 4-4. So that failed. I miscounted. I don't normally do that. So
Since
we
we're in
have
committee of the whole, did you want to vote, Mr. Mayor?
Oh, do I get to vote at the committee of the whole? Well, I vote yes on both. Excuse me, yes on the agreement as a whole, no on the name change, but I forgot we're at a committee of the whole. So that ends the discussion. For those of you who are here to watch, we will take this up and perhaps we'll move it to the beginning of our meeting at the Common Council in a few minutes. We've got a couple of short things that we need to take up. It's later in the agenda, but considering the interest there, it might be appropriate to move to suspend the rules when we get to the Common Council meeting in a few minutes. We only have one other item on the Committee of the Whole. I guess we have two items on Committee of the Whole. There was a proposal to whether we send to a committee. We have this new Committee of the Whole format. This is not to debate the merits of the proposal, but whether there's enough interest on the Common Council to send an idea to a committee to see if they want to work it up. And that's the establishment of all-terrain vehicle routes on Mequon roads. I think Alderman Strelchek was the person who raised the issue. If you've got 1 minute that you'd like to raise, and then we'll see if the committee wants to refer this to a committee or not.
Yeah, I see in a lot of other rural communities that they have ATV access on different roads. As you go out west, ATVs are legal on all roads or most roads that vehicles are legal on. And I just wanted to bring up the question to see if there was a pulse or an interest, on our Common Council to entertain that from a community-wide standpoint. If it is going to end up being disastrous and people are upset on it, I'll be the first to vote no. But it was just one of those items that I thought it was worthy to consider. I know that the people out on Hawthorne, if they could, travel back and forth, I don't know that would make any difference at all versus a vehicle. It's something to entertain, and it's been a really nice benefit to other communities.
Alderman Giro.
I see tractors and I see, all kinds of stuff on the roads out where I live. I mean, ATVs on the roads, nobody complains about it at all. It's 5 acres and pretty rural out there. So, if there's a way, you wouldn't want them coming down, Mequon Road or cutting through Thiensville on a regular basis. But in some areas, I think I like it. So,
Alderman Schneider.
I'm going to be the naysayer, partly because these vehicles say right on them, often from the manufacturer, they're not designed to be used on paved roads. They have low pressure tires. They have a high center of gravity. They don't turn very well. Even though many places don't allow them on roads, in terms of fatalities, some studies show 2/3 of them are on the road, from fatalities. They're just not designed to go on the roadway. It's not to say some people can't do it, and probably if they're driving slowly, some people can do it safely. But I don't see a big reason to open the roadways to ATVs, being that they're not a safe vehicle.
Meyer and then Alderman Hampshire.
Just quick, this little thing of history. We went through this, not on all terrains, but went through this for golf cart-like vehicles. I don't know. The mayor was on board at the time. Just a little sense of history. Is this thing on? Okay, a little sense of history. We went through this a few years back, and I don't know if anybody was on the board at that time. Maybe the mayor was. I don't think so. But we went through it because we're talking about golf cart-like vehicles, and did a pretty big study on it, and came across that it really didn't function well. It didn't work well here in the city, but I got no problem taking a look at it again, but just kind of going back and redoing the same thing.
Alderman Hampshire.
I agree with Alderperson Schneider that I don't think it was a good idea. I think there's too many accidents that could occur, and I don't think it would be wise to pursue it.
I'll give you my comment, although if this goes to a committee, I won't be here to deal with it, but I'll give you my 1-second comment. I have 2 of them up north. They're my primary mode of transportation when I'm there. I ride them everywhere. I like riding them everywhere. But it's a rural area unlike Mequon, because even our rural areas have high-end residential subdivisions in the middle of them. They're loud, they're noisy. Our roads are narrower. We don't have shoulders. I think there's lots of reasons. Now, I agree, farm vehicles, that's by state law. Farm vehicles are allowed on roadways. And there's even a question whether ATVs, if used for farm purposes, can be on roadways, but I don't think so. Mine are registered to my farm. And, you know, I'm just not sure Mequon, I think you'd end up with such a limited network of roads that it actually works on that it probably becomes, not feasible. Golf carts, maybe it's worth bringing up, but that's only within subdivisions. And so there's only a few subdivisions that it would make sense. I like the idea. I don't think it works for Mequon, and I probably don't think you'd want to spend a lot of time on it because we tend to go down these rabbit holes where we ask staff to spend lots and lots and lots of time. And at the end of the thing, we realize there's probably a reason we don't have them now. That's my two cents. Is there a motion to refer this to the Public Safety Committee?
No, there is not.
All right. If not, future policy items for discussion, consideration, analysis, like this one, people should bring them forward. And it does save our committee's time rather than having it get bogged down in a committee if there's not enough interest. So is there a motion to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting?
Move to adjourn. Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn the committee of the whole meeting. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
We will next, and these next couple should be fairly quick. The Sewer Utility District Commission meeting. Please call the roll. I'll call the roll. Alderman Strelchek. Here. Alderman Boucher. Here. Oh, yeah, what do you want to call it? I can do it. I just want to get it.
Alderman Strelchek.
I'm here.
Alderman Bushy.
Here.
Alderman Meyer.
Here.
Alderman Hancher.
Here.
Commissioner Garrell.
Still here.
Commissioner Parrish.
Here.
Commissioner Schneider.
Here.
Commissioner Nervin.
Here.
Commissioner Worth.
Here. We have a quorum. The first item of business is to approve the Sewer Utility District Commission meeting minutes of March 8th, 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, corrections, or comments? Aye. Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We have two resolutions. One actually will take a couple of minutes. The first one is Resolution 3946. This is a resolution authorizing a waiver from our code's provisions requiring sanitary service for the property located at 1310 Highland Road. And let me give you a brief, while staff is getting prepared, a brief rundown. The applicant actually was considering having us remove this item from the agenda this evening. They are looking at other alternatives to this right now based on work the city's doing to the sanitary sewer utility district. I decided to leave this on the agenda anyhow because we could approve this waiver, but it would be contingent upon them actually entering into a waiver agreement with us. So if they don't want it, it goes away, but we don't have to chew this thing twice. This is for the corner of Highland and Port Washington Road, the residential area behind the medical office building. The proposal that's there, by not requiring sanitary sewer service, they would have a less dense development than they would if they probably hooked up to our service.
Question. So they wanted to pull it because they no longer want a less dense?
Well, they're talking about going with the sewer service. They think that the cost won't be as great as they thought, and therefore they would apply for a development agreement under the allowed zoning as opposed to the reduced. We can't say no to that.
Right.
But they were talking about a slightly less dense residential development.
Why didn't they want us to table it?
Why don't we table it then?
We can table it.
I move to table this.
We have a motion and a second to table. All in favor of tabling, please say aye.
Aye.
I thought perhaps you'd want to take it up because you wanted the less dense development. Give them that.
I do, but
make it
I didn't know
easier
what the
for
developer
them.
wanted. So.
Make it easier for them.
No.
What's that?
It's too late.
No, that's all right. Okay,
All right.
that sounds good.
The next item, Resolution 3947. This was a resolution authorizing the award of 6 contracts for various sanitary sewer projects, generator purchase pumping system, design, inspections, and lateral locating services. Is there any questions for staff on this item? If not, is there, Alderman Schneider?
I'm all of these expenses seem very reasonable to me, but I just had a clarification question about lift station E. I understand the logic behind getting a separate pump with a separate source of natural gas as opposed to electricity as a backup, but it was also referenced in there that you weren't able to find property to reestablish a new lift system. So I'm wondering, is there a way to?
It should have said yet. I mean, we haven't stopped pursuing it, but after 3 public information meetings, we don't have anyone volunteering to otherwise grant us the easement.
So my secondary question was, is there any possibility of using that same piece of property and creating a new lift station on that property, or is it logistically impossible?
We don't own the property, so we only have an easement, and yes, it is physically impossible to, we can't take the existing lift station out of service. We would have to keep that in service during the construction of the new lift station, which can't fit in the easement. So,
got it. That was my question.
So,
Alderman Parrish.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Lindeen and I had corresponded about this. My question is also about Lift Station E, and what we're voting on tonight is just the $74,000 to design the backup system. I was just curious if you had any idea, is this going to be a multi-million-dollar project, and really where my line of questioning is going? Are we just doubling down?
it is not intended to double down. It is not intended to otherwise replace the replacement project. It is otherwise intended to be a stopgap. Unfortunately, in every wet weather event, we put residents at risk of basement backups due to the surcharging that we've identified in the system. So the backup pump would be intended to alleviate some of that so that it wouldn't otherwise result in surcharging until we can address the capacity issues with the station itself.
I would, if possible, I would just like to request that when you come back, I assume we're going to approve the $75,000 expense, but when you come back with the cost design of the system, at least show us some of the sites you've considered. And
you saw them all. I mean, you approved the sites that were otherwise
they've all been approached and they all said no. And
yep.
So we have nothing.
When we went through the land use analysis and otherwise whittled down the sites, that was what Sewer Utility District Commission otherwise authorized us to do, to negotiate with those properties for those easements.
But you said we're still looking, so let's not give up.
We're not. It's just, again, unfortunately.
Maybe a house will become for sale and we can buy it.
We are talking about rights of first refusal. That's another option that we would otherwise consider.
Is there a motion? Has there been a motion? Did I Alzheimer's kick in and I forgot? Or
has there been a motion?
Is there a motion to recommend this to the common?
I move to recommend it to the Common Council.
Is there a second? Second. A motion and a second to recommend this to the Common Council. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of recommending this to the Common Council, please say aye.
Aye.
Is there
Mayor, I'm just reclusing myself from the vote.
Oh, okay. Is there a motion to close the Sewer Utility District Commission meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
To adjourn, excuse me. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. The next item is the Mequon Municipal Water Utility District or Utility Commission. Can we just have the record reflect the same people are here? That we're at the Sewer Utility District Commission. Is there a motion to approve the meeting minutes of March 8th, 2022? Move approval. Second. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those are approved. We have two discussion items. The authorization of a contract to represent the city along with other municipalities in connection with a Milwaukee Water Works rate case in front of the Public Service Commission. This is actually a low enough cost that this wouldn't necessarily need to be here, but the decision was made by staff to at least let you know this is going on. And if I might make a quick description to save some time, the Milwaukee is looking at, they're asking to have costs go up. We want to make sure that it's not an unfair burden to those contract communities like us, which they in the past had wanted to do. So at a fairly low cost, we're part of a group that will go into the Public Service Commission. On behalf, another example of how we work well with Thiensville, because many people in Thiensville are on our water utility, we want to keep the costs down. Is there a motion to approve? Oh, this is just a discussion item.
No, it's,
Yeah, so there's really no motion. Does anybody have any questions? Everybody's fine with that. The next item is approval of the Mequon Water Utility Water Connection Policy. Now, this doesn't say it's you're looking for an approval, but I assume you are?
Yes.
Okay, you have it under discussion items. Director Lundin, what do you want to tell us about this?
This was before you last month. It was referred to a policy subcommittee. The policy subcommittee otherwise reviewed the document, recommended approval of incorporation of the changes that were summarized in a memo to you on March 8th, the night of the previous meeting, as well as a change to otherwise acknowledge with the addition of the Uleo Creek neighborhood, that there is not a requirement for those existing structures to connect, just like there was with the establishment of the water utility. So with those changes, they otherwise recommended it move forward to this body for approval.
Is there any discussions or a motion to approve the policy?
Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the policy. Any further discussion? If not, please call the roll.
Commissioner Strelchuk?
Aye.
Commissioner Bushy?
Aye.
Commissioner Meyer?
Aye.
Commissioner Hansher?
Aye.
Commissioner Garrell?
Aye.
Commissioner Parrish?
Aye.
Commissioner Schneider?
Aye.
Commissioner Nervin?
Aye.
Commissioner Worth?
Aye, and that's approved. Is there a motion to adjourn the Mequon Municipal Water Utility Commission meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
The next item, we will now go into the Common Council meeting for Tuesday, April 12th. If everyone could rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Madam Clerk, if you could please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Here.
Alderman Bushy?
Here.
Alderman Meyer?
Here.
Alderman Hansher?
Here.
Alderman Garrell?
Here.
Alderman Parrish?
Here.
Alderman Schneider?
Here.
Alderman Nervin?
Here.
And Mayor Worth?
Here. We have a quorum. As I suggested earlier, it might be nice to make a motion to suspend the rules and take up Resolution 3936. That's the Fire and Emergency Medical Services Agreement, since we've already discussed it and lots of people here are interested.
Make a motion to suspend the rules and take up item 3936 now.
There's second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of suspending the rules and taking this up now, please say aye.
Aye.
And we will take it up. Is there any further discussion needed, or does someone want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve ordinance 3936.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Alderman Parrish.
Just wanted to remind members of the public to review the committee of the whole video. We had a healthy discussion about this topic just a few minutes ago, so make sure you know that your Common Council thoroughly vetted this issue. Thank you.
Anything else? If not, Madam Clerk, please call the roll to approve Resolution 3936.
Alderman Strelchuk?
Aye.
Alderman Bushy?
Aye.
Alderman Meyer?
Aye.
Alderman Hansher?
Aye.
Alderman Garrell?
Aye.
Alderman Parrish?
Aye.
Alderman Schneider?
Aye.
Alderman Nervin?
Aye.
And that Resolution 3936 passes. We hand this over to the Village of Thiensville and look forward to working with you. We don't have any public hearings this evening. The next item on the agenda is personal appearances and public comment. Citizens wishing to address the council on any matter not on the agenda may do so at this time. If you want to be heard, please fill out one of these sheets. I'll call name. There'll be a discussion by the council on Swan Ridge Farms this evening. That will come up next month. If you want to make your pitch tonight and then come back next month to make the pitch again, you can. But there's not going to be any action taken, so this would be the appropriate time to make those statements. Although I would sometimes recommend that it's better to do it at the meeting. There will be a public hearing where your input will be solicited at the May meeting. That might be the more efficient time for you to make those comments, but you certainly have the right to make the comments this evening. So I'll call people's names who signed up for that item, and then if you'd like to step forward and make your comments, you may. The first person who, if you want to wait to the public hearing, that would be great too. The first person who signed up is Anthony Keene of 9639 West Huntington Drive. Mr. Keene, would you like to speak tonight, or do you want to wait till the public hearing? All right. Again, the time limit is 5 minutes.
Good evening. So I recently became aware of the proposed development, and the only thing I have a whole list of things that I have questions on. I've been unable to find resources on like environmental impact studies based on the Mequon Nature Preserve, which is home to 213 different species of migratory birds. There's protected wetlands that are in the plans that are going to be impacted. So I'm just requesting that if those impact reports are out there, or if more information could be made available. But then one final statement is, in general, Mequon is going down a path of lots of development, and as the meeting earlier discussed, emergency services and various other infrastructure, we are exploring caution to get data and find out ways to reduce response times and things of that nature. This proposed development is 80 some houses, which would put a rough estimate of maybe 250 more occupants in that area. There are other developments that are much, much larger. They're being proposed, and other developments that have been made in recent years. I don't feel that there's a ton of data available for the average citizen to understand some of this stuff. So if there are more materials that are available for us in preparation of the upcoming meeting, I would appreciate if those were made available, because I wasn't able to find them.
We don't normally do kind of a give and take during this, but I would recommend that you call Kim Tollefson or Jack Zader at City Hall. They're always willing to talk to residents about any proposed development and provide information, explain processes, and that's the best way to get information in advance of a meeting, rather than coming to the meeting and we don't know what you're asking in advance. So that would be, again, I'll repeat the names, Kim Tollefson and Jack Zader. They're the Department of Community Development.
Thank you.
But thank you. Have a good evening. The next person registered to speak is Jamie Joycey of 10014 North Concord Drive. And I don't know if you'd like to, Mr. Joycey, if you'd like to speak. There will be a presentation. I presume that we always do a projection of what's there. Happy to do that. Again, we weren't really planning on anybody being here tonight, so we didn't prepare anything because the first readings. Sure. All right. And the next person registered to speak is Kristen Humpel. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. She lives at 10144 North Concord Drive. Ms. Humpel.
Thank you. I am not a public speaker, so please bear with me. I'm actually more worried about the safety of this. So I'm a physician assistant. I have worked at a level 1 trauma center. So when you guys talk about the safety of getting emergency personnel quicker, I totally wholeheartedly agree with that. I did my master's thesis on cardiovascular resuscitation. So getting there faster is definitely saves people. So thank you for keeping that in mind and at the basis of the decisions you guys make. So when we moved back here from California, my goal as a mother is to make it safe for my 7 and 4-year-old to grow up.
Take a deep breath. You'll feel better. Nobody's judging you. You know, and this is a friendly group. So
This is just the way I do public speaking. Sorry about that.
no problem.
So my husband and I have a 7 and 4-year-old, and I just want them to grow up successful, as you mostly all do too with your children, successful and physically and mentally healthy. So we purposely chose a neighborhood that had a lot of small families, a lot of new growth, a lot of people that at their heart wanted to be outside, physically active. So we chose a neighborhood that is runners, walkers, pets, bikers. You know, it's a very active community, and we love all of our neighbors, and we're joining in a community to build it and make it better. We have a pool in our backyard where we have kids coming over to do swim lessons. I want all of our kids to grow up friendly and have that support system that they so much need. As I worked on a trauma service, I know what happens when people feel disconnected. And I would like to avoid, you know, a lot of issues with teenagers that they have going to drugs and things like that. Like we picked Mequon specifically for this. It has a city center that keeps kids active, but then we're out in the rural area so that they can go and explore and get into, you know, small trouble that kids get into, but safely, so that they're doing things that keep them busy and keep them away from other activities when they're teenagers. I would have to say that we brought this to Alderman Hansher a year ago, and I just don't think that possibly he is in the same cycle of life and worrying about that as we are. A lot of the people, you said at the last meeting how you didn't feel like we had a big turnout, and you were thinking that maybe our neighborhood wasn't that worried about it. Well, they are, but they're at home taking care of their small kids right now. Luckily, we have a family that takes care of our kids so that we could come here today. We're just all trying to do what's right for our kids, and I'm not trying to say that a neighborhood isn't right for our kids. I'm just saying 83 houses is a lot more. There's going to be a lot more traffic. Again, we want to be on the streets. We want to be fostering that where the kids just go down to the neighbor's house and say, hey, do you want to play? You know, they gain independence safely in our neighborhood, and we're all looking out for each other's kids. And yes, you would say, well, why wouldn't more houses want that? Well, yeah, sure, but then there's the environmental impact of it all. We're right next to the nature preserve, and having more houses there, what is that going to do for all of the efforts that they're putting in to increase native habitat? Like we do have all those rare birds. And right now, the last few days, I could see a hawk circling around that farm, but then they come to the first edge of the houses, and then it goes back. It's once those 83 houses are there, it's going to take that whole 88 acres away from his predatory, you know, cycle. I just love where we are, and I think 83 houses is going to impact it significantly. 16 sounded like a great way to still share our wonderful neighborhood and not make it such a big deal. And I worry because Wilson Elementary School just had to rezone. What is that going to do when all the other development houses and this new development house all join schools? Again, those students started at Wilson, and now 100 of them have to go to other schools. They have friends. This is impacting social lives of children that could screw up their teenage years. I don't want to make decisions for financial gain that are going to affect. You want to grow your city and have a community feeling and grow healthy people, right? I just worry about what the impact of all that's going to be. Again, on safety, the retention ponds that are proposed in all of the other developments, they're unrestricted. Again, children just walking around there, slipping in on a muddy day, drowning. Again, we do the swim lessons in our backyard to increase water safety. I'm worried that these children are going to be walking around the neighborhood, slip in, no one will know that they're in there, and drown. You can Google it. There's drownings a couple a year, at least just in a quick Google search. I'll get numbers if you want real numbers. But if we are doing this, you'll probably hear me say a lot over the next couple of years, can we have fences and fountains? Fences to reduce the risk of drowning fountains to decrease the amount of mosquito breeding grounds that we have in the area. Can we start talking about what those implications do to our neighborhoods? The environmental factors with noise and light pollution. Has anyone asked the Nature Preserve if they think that's going to be a concern for them? And everyone keeps talking about home values. Again, someone that might be a little bit more senior is more worried about if their house can sell. I'm worried about keeping our neighborhood. I don't want to sell my house. I love the community that we've built. We've spent the last 3 years really getting to know people. I'm not worried about if our house was sold 2 weeks ago, someone put their house up, they got 3 offers that day. I don't think it's a home sale resale value. I think with increased house prices, then increased taxes, I think there's positives and negatives to that argument. And I just think
you got to kind of wind it up a little bit.
This is my last point. I just think we should take the sage advice from Mr. Alderman that he said, don't grow too quickly. Go slow, see where you're at, watch what the effects down the line are before you go bigger.
Thank you, Ms. Hample. The next item on the agenda are public officials' reports. I have 2 things that I would like to acknowledge this evening. The first is we just got done with an election, and I'd like to thank the clerk's office and the clerk's staff and frankly an awful lot of volunteers for once again making an election go very, very smoothly. There was a group that came to City Hall today to acknowledge the clerk's office on National Clerk Recognition Day, which I couldn't find anywhere. I do find Municipal Clerks Recognition Week, which is the first week of May, so I hope the mayor at that point does a proclamation honoring our clerk's department. But I would like to at least point out that our clerk, you do a great job, your deputies do a great job, and your volunteers do a great job, and it's a great thing for the city of Mequon, and so we appreciate the work you do.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
And-
Mayor?
Yes.
I believe there's somebody else who, there's a name in the basket for.
Oh, Lori Kornblum, I'm sorry, I almost missed that, but, well, it's not, after I'm done with the report, I'll call on Ms. Kornblum. Secondly, I have another resolution that I'd like to read this evening, or a proclamation. It's a proclamation recognizing Education and Sharing Day, and it goes as follows. Quality education is one of the significant foundations for the continuing success of our community, state, and country. In the city of Mequon, we place a high value on education and sharing. We believe that by providing opportunities for an excellent education, giving each child what they need to develop to their full academic and social potential, we can create hope for a better, kinder, and more united and prosperous future. In 1978, the United States Congress established April 12th, today, as Education and Sharing Day, USA. April 12th was chosen to honor Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, a Jewish rabbi born on that day. Rabbi Schneerson advocated for the education of children with a focus on building character by emphasizing the cultivation of those shared values that have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization. Although the particular day was chosen in honor of a specific Jewish rabbi, the purpose of the day is relevant to people of all faiths and backgrounds. Every president since then has issued an annual proclamation on April 12, urging Americans to focus on education and the betterment of society. Either the governor or legislature of all 50 states has subsequently proclaimed April 12th as Education Day or Education and Sharing Day. We join other communities that have declared April 12th as Education and Sharing Day. Accordingly, I, John Worth, Mayor of the City of Mequon, on behalf of all citizens of the City of Mequon, proclaim Tuesday, April 12th, 2022, as Education and Sharing Day in the City of Mequon, and call upon government officials, educators, volunteers, and citizens to advocate for an equitable and value-based education for all. I delivered this to our the Jewish Community Center a week ago. but and posted it on Facebook, so that in advance of 8:15 at night on the day we proclaimed it. But I would like to acknowledge it was brought to my attention by the community center, but it's a great thing for a community to acknowledge, regardless of faith and background. So that is the proclamation for today. Probably the last one I will issue as mayor. Thank you. And I do notice that there are some representatives of the Jewish Community Center here, and we'd like to thank you. I do understand that Lori Kornblum, who is a former member of our Board of Appeals, wanted to raise the issue of this proclamation. I don't know, Ms. Kornblum, if you wanted to say something, but please do. It's a little out of the ordinary to do this during reports, but it kind of ties into the timing.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to introduce myself. I'm Lori Kornblum. As you said, I'm a former member of the Board of Appeals. I'm a judge on the Court of Appeals in Wisconsin right now, but I am speaking in my personal capacity, not as a governmental official. And the reason for me speaking is really on behalf of the community here in Mequon, the Jewish community that you just referenced, to thank you and the council for recognizing this very auspicious date. There was going to be a very large delegation of people from the community sitting here. That large delegation is currently sitting in New York. Their plane got canceled, not because of what happened in New York, but because of mechanical trouble on the plane. So they apologize for not appearing. But today, April 12th, 2022, has been proclaimed Education and Sharing Day throughout the U.S., and I wanted to thank you. This is the 120th anniversary of the commemoration of the birth of the rabbi that you talked about, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, who is known as the Rebbe, whose vision and actions inspired this commemoration. And it is a great day of celebration. Many people went to New York. Thousands of people went to the resting place of the Rebbe, the oil, today, which is why they're there and not here. But even in times of great joy, we must experience also great sadness. And I would be remiss in failing to note on this day we have heard of the senseless, tragic violence in New York against innocent people going about their daily lives, reminding us that every day we need to remind ourselves of the values of life, learning, education, and value in each other that the Rebbe stood for. Although the Rebbe was born 120 years ago, his influence is timely today. His great modern Jewish sage was born in Ukraine, a country that today demands a call to moral clarity and strength in the world. Ukraine, as we speak, we know is being pummeled by Russian forces, and the movement that the Rebbe was a part of, Chabad, is spearheading the humanitarian effort in Ukraine, not just for Jews, but for people of all beliefs, to try to ameliorate the situation there and get them out. His teachings have been imparted to the Jewish people a sense of responsibility to God and to one another, but they've spread beyond the Jewish people and, as you recognize, have informed and inspired countless world leaders, Jewish and non-Jewish, because they concern universal values. He was a leader who exemplified true selflessness, whose altruism grew in others exponentially and continues to inspire not only the Jewish people, but many others throughout the world. So in closing, Jews and people of all faiths around the world here in Mequon are influenced by the Rebbe through thousands of emissaries, teachings, and actions. And I just want to thank, on behalf of the community, the Common Council, Mayor Worth, and everybody else here for recognizing this day, and that we should all continue to go from strength to strength and appreciate the values that the Rebbe brought to this world. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Kornblum. The next item on the agenda is the City Administrator's report.
Mayor, members of the council, I do not have a report tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. We heard enough from you already. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. We have 15 sets of minutes on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve? Move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The next item, we also have two resolutions on the consent agenda, which I overlooked. A resolution approving a certified survey map for the property at 12650 North Wazaki Road to dedicate public right-of-way, and Resolution 3935, which is a resolution approving a certified survey map for 12535 North Lakeshore Drive dedicating public right-of-way. These were both recommended to you by the Planning Commission on March 21st. Is there a motion to approve that portion of the consent agenda?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
There's one first reading. I'll read the first reading, but we will not be acting on it this evening. And that's Resolution 2022-1620, an ordinance amending the municipal code to rezone the 86-acre parcel located on the west side of Swan Road, north of County Line Road, from 5-acre to 1-acre densities with a central growth area overlay, and to amend the city's land use plan map accordingly. This was recommended by the Planning Commission on March 21st, 2022, and this is a first reading. We do have one ordinance on the agenda this evening. That's Ordinance 2022-1619, and this is an ordinance that relates to the outdoor burning regulations. This was recommended by the Public Welfare Committee on January 11th. We had a first reading at the Common Council on February 8th. It was tabled by the Common Council on March 8th. And this evening, the Public Welfare Committee met and discussed this. Mr. Chairman.
And we unanimously approved it.
That's with the recommended changes by the city attorney that were in the packet. Do you have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to move from table.
Oh, thank you.
Second.
Damn, I can't make it my last meeting without screwing up, can I? Excuse my language. What?
Now can you move to approve?
Yeah, is there a motion and a second to remove this from the table?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of removing it from the table, please say aye.
Aye.
And now, I think I heard a motion and a second to approve the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any discussion on the ordinance? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider is not here. Alderman Nurbin.
He abstained.
And Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye. And that passes. Resolution, we already took up Resolution 3936. The next item is Resolution 3937. This is to clear the personal property tax roll of delinquent accounts deemed uncollectible for the tax roll year 2020. The Finance Personnel Committee recommends this to the Common Council. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to
Hold on one second. Did you want to vote on the last item? We haven't done a next item. This was the outdoor burning ordinance?
You said yes.
Oh, yes.
All right. So we're on the resolution clearing the personal property tax roll. Is there a motion?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Questions, comments, anything else? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
The next item is Resolution 3938. This is to approve a side letter agreement between the city and the Fire Association establishing medical leave time for full-time paramedic firefighters upon hire. This was recommended to you by the Finance Personnel Committee this evening. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
There's a motion and a second. Questions, comments, discussion. Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3939. This is a resolution authorizing the execution of a 3-year contract for a backup system. The Finance Personnel Committee recommends this to you this evening. I would note that Alderman Boucher asked a bunch of really good questions during committee. Is there a motion to approve this resolution?
Move to approve. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Stralchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
And Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
The next item is Resolution 3940, and this is to execute a software contract for cloud-based transition of the city's enterprise systems. This was also recommended to you by the Finance Personnel Committee this evening. Alderman Bushy didn't ask any questions. No, just kidding. Is there a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3941, this is a contract for streetscape design on Port Washington Road between Mequon and County Line Roads. This also is recommended to you this evening by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions, comments? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
And that passes. Resolution 3942, this is a resolution ratifying the recording of the expenses from the demolition of the Port Zedler Motel so that it's paid by TID number 5 special fund. Just as a 1 second of background, that money has already been paid, but it's been paid out of the general fund. It makes after discussion, it makes more sense to have that come out of the TID. In either event, when the property is sold or refinanced, that money gets paid back to the TID. If it doesn't get paid, or if it's not paid back by the time the TID's closed, then it becomes a debt owed to the city general fund. Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any questions, comments, or discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
The next item, Resolution 3943, this approves a contract for baseball field management for the 2022 season. This was recommended by the Park and Open Space Board on March 16th. What did Public Works Committee do with it this evening, Mr. Chairman?
Public Works unanimously approved, and I make a motion to approve Resolution 3943.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Guess we want to maintain our baseball fields. Please call the roll.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3944, a resolution approving amendments to the city fee schedule for fiscal year 2022. This was recommended to you by the Finance Personnel Committee. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
And Alderman Strelchuk.
And that passes. Resolution 3945. This is to approve the purchase of a cat excavator and financing from Port Washington State Bank. What did Public Works Committee do with this?
Public Works approved Resolution 3945, and I make a motion to approve 3945.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, please call the roll.
Alderman Meyer.
Aye.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
And Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
And that passes. Resolution 3946, this is the sanitary sewer waiver that we tabled at the Sewer Utility District Commission a few minutes ago. Is there a motion to table this by the Common Council this evening?
Move the table.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And the final resolution, Resolution 3947. This authorizes the award of 6 contracts for various sanitary sewer projects. This was recommended by all of you who were sitting as the Sewer Utility District Commission a few minutes ago. Is there a motion to approve Resolution 3947?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Recusing.
Alderman Meyer recuses himself. No discussion. Please call the roll.
Alderman Hancher.
Aye.
Alderman Garrow.
Aye.
Alderman Parrish.
Aye.
Alderman Schneider.
Aye.
Alderman Nurbin.
Aye.
Alderman Strelchuk.
Aye.
Alderman Bushy.
Aye.
And this will be the last time I say this. Alderman Garrow, do you have a motion for us?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.